And now, the Lowe Post.
Welcome to the Lowe Post podcast, where it's the Friday before the NBA playoffs, which means it must be time for the fourth or fifth or third time no longer has any meaning. A 8x8 first round rapid fire series preview with the one and only David Thorpe of True Hoop and the author of Basketball is Jazz and just all around good guy. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. It's a weird time to be talking playoffs, of course, as I take my kids to college tomorrow. None of this makes any sense, but luckily I think we have a lot to look forward to. Thank goodness.
Well, we don't even have an 8x8 because we don't have 8 yet. Right. We only have 7 playoff series that are set. Everyone is assuming the 8th one will be Blazers-Lakers. The Blazers only have to beat the Grizzlies once. And let's just take a second. What Damian Lillard has done in the last 3 games, I mean the whole bubble, but the last 3 games, 50-something, 60-something, 40-something. And for a team that it's just, they're the cardiac kids of the bubble. Like every game is coming down to the wire. They need literally every point to survive and get into the play-in. Damian Lillard, look, I'm a Damian Lillard true believer. I had him 4th on my MVP ballot. I think he might be the single best leader in the entire NBA. But what he has done in the bubble is absolutely ridiculous. However, I want to know where you stand on this, Coach. There's been a lot of, if the Blazers get it, there's been a lot of discussion in the media about, ooh, that's a nightmare for the Lakers. That's a tough first-round matchup. This is a Western Conference Finals team. That's an 8th seed. That's not normal. Just very quickly, since we're not going to do the Lakers, like, if that's the series, like, I think Lakers-Memphis is a walkover for the Lakers. I don't care that LeBron's looked rusty, this and that. Like, that's a walkover. Memphis is banged up, blah, blah, blah. What would be your 30-second Lakers-Blazers?
I mean, how's LeBron playing? If LeBron is the guy that we saw all year pre-pandemic, break, I don't think it's that competitive. Although Portland clearly is much better than Memphis for reasons we understand. This was not the team we saw all year, right? But if LeBron, I just thought his handle wasn't sharp. I tweeted about this some. He clearly either was saving something, or I think a combination of waiting his turn, which you talk about this all the time on your show every week. We know what you stopped picking against the Cavs when you realized that he was just kind of sandbagging. But his skill game looked a little soft to me, Zach. And the only other thing I'll say is, you mentioned Damian, of course, and I wrote this last night, what Nurkic did was breathtaking to me as just an old ball coach. This is an enormous man who literally gave me the example to send young players. This is how you leave it on the court. There are parts of Nurkic's skin right now and bone on that court.
He was on the floor 5 times in the last 5 minutes of the game.
It was just, they did everything they could, and they couldn't celebrate, which is the point I want to make. I don't know if they're going to beat Memphis twice. I definitely don't know if they'll beat him this first time. They've got to be exhausted. And Memphis has really almost nothing to lose. They made it when it looked like they may not. Portland probably wins, but they're going to be so tired. I think they come back, if they win Saturday, at least they get some rest before they play, I think, Tuesday. But I just think they're going to be in a hole before they get started because they're going to be so exhausted. So I still think LA in 5 maybe, but they'll be good games. I mean, Portland's not a walkover for sure. And CJ being hurt is why I think it's much easier. He's not the same player with basically a broken back.
Well, you just took it right out of my mouth. Count me as a skeptic that that's a tough series for the Lakers. I think that they roll that series pretty easily because Portland, after 4 months off, is just playing with Game 7 desperation every single game. Nurkic has been off for a year, recovering from injury, not playing. Dame could get those 90 seconds of rest at the beginning of the fourth quarter. And other than that, just playing the whole second half. CJ's got a broken back. They're thin as all hell to begin with. Collins is still working his way back. Like, Terry pulled him in crunch time after he missed a couple shots yesterday. I get that LeBron's look rusty. The Lakers are down a couple rotation guards, though Rondo may be back. I just don't see that as a tough series for the Lakers. Let me just go back to Lillard for a second.
Yeah.
My friend Jason Concepcion from The Ringer, who is the Corgi, people might know him as Network the Corgi on Twitter, posted some anonymous spice last night from a fellow Ringer staffer saying, we talk about Damian Lillard like he's a 6-time champion, but he just got his team the 8th seed. if you're getting knocked out early in the playoffs year after year, why don't we just call you what you are, a mediocre superstar? And you see that line of thought now and then about Damian Lillard. Like, if he's this good, why are the Blazers not getting anywhere in the playoffs other than the conference finals every season? And I actually think I vehemently disagree with that. I'm a Damian Lillard true believer. Maybe I'm the wrong person to ask, but I think there is too much of that in NBA analysis to begin with, denigrating second round playoff appearances as if they're the equivalent of nothing. And so Damian Lillard, they've made the playoffs the last 6 years, 3 first round exits. One was to the Warriors, so okay, what the hell am I supposed to do about that? One was that embarrassing sweep against the Pelicans, which is that was a bad series. That was a bad series for Dame. It was a bad series for the team. 2 second round exits, another one to the Warriors, so sorry they couldn't beat the Warriors, and a conference finals loss to the Warriors. Sorry you couldn't beat the Warriors. So here's my point. Yes, Dame has come up short of the finals, all right? So, like, life in the Western Conference for the past 25 years, has been really, really hard. Kevin Garnett got out of the first round once in Minnesota. One time. Once before getting traded to Boston. It's like Chris Paul hasn't made the conference finals but once. Like, it's just really hard in the Western Conference. And an interesting contrast to me is Paul George, who early in his career gets to play huge conference finals games for the Indiana Pacers, comes up huge. Like, I'm a Paul George super fan. Like, yeah. Paul George is a boss. I say it all the time. Comes up huge for the Pacers at a preposterously young age, going head-to-head with LeBron. You know why? In part because Derrick Rose got injured and the East sucked and getting to the conference finals wasn't hard. So I just saw that Damian Lillard thing and it just sort of rubbed me a little bit the wrong way because life in the West is just different. And getting to the conference finals in the West is really hard. And getting to the second round is an accomplishment. And if you look at the team he's carrying right now, it's like not a great team. I'm sorry.
To me, don't apologize because I agree with you 100%. It's disrespectful to the role executives and coaches play, especially executives. And I would just point you to this. Look at the Clippers roster. It is an embarrassment of riches. And they started the season with Paul George and Kawhi. But they knew, Lawrence Frank and others knew, to beat these teams, and the Warriors, obviously wasn't even going to be this team, but the Lakers were, and Denver, and on and on. They loaded up. I don't know why Portland hasn't, and what they've tried has failed. It's not anyone's fault that Nurkic got hurt. They've had some bad luck.
Their current team is a good team. Let's be clear. Let me be clear. Neil Olsen, this team's a good team, but they haven't had this team all year.
They're a top 4 seed if this is the team from day one. Maybe top 5, just because the West is so loaded. But we've seen what they look like when they're healthy. It's not Damian's fault that they've drafted some of the players they've drafted and failed to develop certain players that they failed to develop. To punish the player, I lived with a bunch of guys growing up in college with Dan Marino. They're all from Miami. And you may remember Dan Marino. And he never won a Super Bowl, but I had to watch the games because they were my roommates and nobody could defend the guy. It's not his fault that their defense stunk and they had no running backs and whatever. It didn't make him anything less than incredible. Damian, to me, I don't think he's as good as Steph Curry, partly because I don't think he defends the way Steph has defended. He's the closest thing offensively that I've ever seen. In this modern game, he's the closest thing, and he's showing it. What he's doing, only Curry has done.
You know how many playoff series Paul George has won in the Western Conference? 0.
None.
0. Yeah. It's hard to win in the West. Don't disrespect Damian Lillard. By the way, there's been like 6 walk-off playoff series winning shots in the history of the NBA. He's got 2 of them. So I don't want to hear any Damian Lillard slander. I won't hear of it. I was going to talk about Jim Boylan, but I don't want to. Let's go right to the first playoff series. I have ordered these loosely because I am a dictator on my own podcast in terms of how interested I am in each series. So spoiler alert, 2 East series as usual will be dead last. My number 1 draft pick. Irresistible, even though one of the irresistible characters is injured for an undetermined period of time. The Oklahoma City Thunder against the Houston Rockets, 4 versus 5 in the West. You have Russ and Harden against their old team. You have Chris Paul's revenge. Look at the contrast of styles. You have the steadiest team in the league against maybe the most volatile. You have a team that takes a ton of mid-range jumpers against a team that will turn them all down unless Russ is feeling a little frisky from mid-range. You have a team that never turns the ball over in Oklahoma City against a team since excising centers has relied a lot on forcing a ton of turnovers. You have a team that never fouls in Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City wins the free throw battle every night. It's like starting up 6-0 against James Harden, who is a walking drawn foul. It's just a fascinating contrast. You have a slow team against a fast team. It's a wonderful contrast of styles. I will start here with the obvious question to you. How concerned are you on behalf of the Rockets with Russell Westbrook missing, I guess, at least a game? I don't even know what to say. At least a game, probably multiple games. How concerned are you? What does that do to their chances?
Concerned as a fan who wants to see this thing go 7. One other thing is OKC is great defending fast breaks, and as you said, the Rockets are trying to fly up and down more. It just, those contrasts never end. It's not like Russell ticked his elbow, but this is, in my opinion, the most athletic point guard in the history of basketball globally who has a quad injury. Right? That is not something we can just ignore, and isn't, even when he comes back, there's going to be some kind of pain that he's going to have to manage. So, yeah, I'm concerned. They're also, I don't have a lot of guys on the team that I trust to make plays. And Russ, for all of his warts and all, he's still a guy that's done in the playoffs a bunch and can literally win a game for his team. Like Austin Rivers, I liked what you wrote today. I've always noticed some talent in Austin. He's from Florida, as you know, and I've kind of paid attention to him. He's not going to win them a game the way Russ can win them a game. And they need that. James Harden looks like Superman often, but can't often be Superman against this team. This team has a lot of guys that can guard him to some degree. And then the other thing I'll throw out is when I watch these teams play, to me, the most unguardable player on the court that isn't named Harden is Schroeder. He shreds those guys one-on-one. Now, this is another contrast issue. One thing we've seen, Zach, in these games is when you've been quarantined a while, there is a factor involved in how good you can come back, how fast you come back. What kind of shape were you in before you were quarantined? How long were you out for? When you're quarantined, what can you do? Are you able to do stuff in your room? All these things are making a difference. And I don't know what Schroeder is going to be able to do. He's not full strength now. I think he's going to be back. I think he's going to be back and fine, but I don't know how good he'll be. But I know they can't guard him. He blows by everybody when he wants to. And Russell's a guy that I don't know that he'll want to play great defense, but we know he can. He makes a difference. So I think I like OKC a little bit to begin with. I like him a little more now.
Interesting. I lean toward Houston, even with Russ out, because I think they're better. B, they've been phenomenal all season with Harden on the floor and Russ off the floor. And I don't think that's a fluke. I think Harden is just that good. I mean, he's just a one-man offense. And yes, they lose playmaking with Russ. I mean, we've seen it 1,000 times. They double Harden, kick the ball to Russ. He drives into the lane, kicks to somebody else. And what they gain, though, is shooting. And I think if you surround James Harden with 4 3-point shooters, doubling him is just as painful to your defense as it is with 1 non-shooter and Russ and 3 shooters. So I think the minutes that actually concern me are when Harden rests, because, as you know, they don't play any real minutes with both those guys on the bench. So that's like a whole new iteration of the Rockets. They're going to have to tread water in those minutes. But I think, look, maybe Russ comes back in game 3, 4, 6, nothing. I don't know. I don't know when he's coming back. But I think Houston can survive this series without him. If he doesn't play at all, I think Oklahoma City gets closer to a coin toss in my mind. But the thing you said about Schroeder is interesting because the Thunder and the Rockets have not played since the Rockets got rid of Capella and went super small. And the player that I'm very interested to see is Chris Paul, because there is no more big man for Chris Paul to pick on in the pick and roll, because that's how Chris operates. Like, bring me Clint Capella. He's going to drop, and I'm going to have that little 8-foot pocket of space, and that's where I work my magic. And that 8-foot pocket of space is gone because they're just going to switch small, and he's not 27 anymore. He doesn't have the zip to get by Robert Covington so easily. And if you switch Clint Capella onto him, by the way, he's going to blow by Clint Capella or hit a step back three. That guy's gone. Like, there is no that guy for Chris to pick on. So I think the gear you're talking about with Schroeder and even Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is very important because you need that one-on-one gear. So I'm very interested to see how Chris. I mean, Chris is the point guard. I had him at second team All-NBA. Don't get me wrong, he's amazing. I think this is a kind of matchup that's going to be interesting for him. I think it's going to be an interesting matchup for him, and I'm interested to see how he deals with it.
So I agree with you. Billy Donovan is coach of the year, although I thought Jacques and Monty made an amazing run late. You wrote about the Celtics feeling today in your column on ESPN, and I think OKC has it too. I think that there's a connection that those guys have for whatever reason and help them play. I mean, let's face it. Most of us thought that. Well, I did. I thought they'd be a lottery team and would trade Chris.
I did. Yep, was wrong.
And that is a cumulative effect over the course of the season. Like, hey, we got something. They just keep getting better and better. So I think that they've got the goods. Unless Houston really comes out well early and those players who most have not produced great in the playoffs suddenly start producing, I think it's going to be a very tight series. Either way, it'll probably be tight, but I give OKC a little bit of an edge because of that.
Interesting. I give Houston a slight edge. I think it's going to be a good series. And I'll tell you a name that casual fans are going to get to know, Luguentz Dort. Not even sure how to say his first name properly because I've heard it a bunch of different ways. Because he's going to be the primary assignment on Harden, and he is a freaking tank.
Monster.
And actually, he only played one game against the Rockets this year and guarded Harden pretty decently. The interesting thing is you can't play all three of those point guards and Dort at the same time unless you're going super small, which we will talk about, which I think we might see them do because they've given Schroeder a few times on Harden, and he actually hung pretty well with him. They've given Terrence Ferguson some times, but I don't know if that's going to happen. They've given Shea a few instances on Harden, but Dort is by far their best option. He's pretty good. They haven't really wanted to double Harden all that much with Dort on him. They've trusted him to do it kind of one-on-one. I think we'll probably see more doubling in this series. But Luguentz Dort is good defensively. He's a stud, and that's going to be a very fun one-on-one battle to watch. Now, to my point earlier, I wonder if we might see some Gallinari at center for Oklahoma City in this series, because if they can't get production from Adams, and by the way, the Thunder have dropped to 29th in offensive rebounding this year, an area where you typically have to punish the Rockets. Right. They haven't been very good at it this year, even with Adams on the floor. And if you want Dort and those 3 point guards all on the floor together, I wonder if we might see that group with Gallo at center a little bit in this series, even as just a gear changer. But Dort versus Harden is going to be fun. Buckle up.
I think too. I'm glad you mentioned doubling because that's what I was going to say next. Is that's the one other factor is when they double, how do they double? At what points do they really make it seem like they're not going to do it and they sneakily do it after a timeout, whatever? I think it's impossible to imagine they don't double him in every game to some degree, especially when he's going left. It's going to happen, and then they'll experiment. You can't just do it every time and let them know what's coming. The way, for example, that Brooklyn did last night with Damian. They saw it coming early,
I also think they need a big series from Gallinari because
I agree.
And when they've played Houston this season, Houston switches everything. So Gallo's going to get some possessions where he's got smaller guys on him, and they've fed him in those possessions.
He's had a fantastic season.
Yeah, and they've said let's see if you can go to work against a little bit of an undersized defender, and he's got to win enough of those possessions and get to the line and do what he does to give Oklahoma City a chance.
I have a question for you, Zach. What do you think of this? These guys like James Harden are used to going every other day, every other night in round 2 and round 3. This is round 1. There's no travel. I get all of that. But do you, especially with Russ being out, do you think it's going to take somewhat of a toll when you're on game 3 and it's this in game 6? I think it might.
It could. The no travel thing is interesting because you talk to people down there, and I've been talking to a lot of them.
Yeah,
they're like, man, it's incredible. We get out of the arena so fast because we don't wait there for the media. We don't get dressed. Like, we're back in our beds if we want to be.
Yep.
Like, all these guys are getting good nights of sleep. Like, it's pretty great. So the answer to these questions, all of these sort of format questions, is unfortunately, I don't know. It's never happened before. It's a crazy situation. So I don't know. It's never happened before. It's a crazy situation. I'm leaning Rockets in this series, but I do think the Thunder have a good chance. Can we let's hit the buzzer? That's more than 8 minutes, but I don't care because we're not going to spend 8 minutes on a couple of these. Yeah. Let us go to a series that you took the lead on in preparing my number 2 draft pick. The 3-6 series in the West, staying in the West, the Denver Nuggets and the Utah Jazz. We have the most wonderful contrast of styles at center that you could possibly imagine. 2 All-NBA level players, one defense first, one offense first, arguably the greatest passing center in the history of basketball, Nikola Jokic. You have a Utah team playing without Bojan Bogdanovic, rather. Brand new starting lineup that is plus 38 in 99 minutes. All their other lineups in the bubble were terrible, but that one was quite good. And you have a Denver team that is very quietly down to 16th in defense and is 29th in defense since the trade deadline, and allows a ton of corner threes, the second most corner threes in the league. And I know a team that hunts corner threes better than almost anyone, and that's the Utah Jazz. Even without Bogdanovic, they hunt corner threes. This is a really interesting matchup of 2 division rivals. Denver won the regular season series 3-0, including a recent double overtime victory in the bubble. The games are actually strangely defense-oriented. This one, even after watching some film, obviously Denver's got a new starter in Michael Porter Jr. That's exciting. This one is very, very hard to call. What do you see?
Oh, I wouldn't even know. To me, it's going to go 7 games, which maybe is a surprise. I have no idea who's going to win. There's no home court to give anyone an advantage. You framed it well. I would throw one other thing that jumped out at me. Utah's good at getting fouled, and Denver likes to foul. They tend to foul shooters a lot, and referees are calling a lot. And I don't know why. I don't know if you know. Are they getting better camera angles and more camera angles in this arena? And so they're getting coached up at halftime and after a game. Their call last night was a scrum, but most of the games have not been a scrum, and that's an advantage for Utah. My one big concern as a Jazz watcher, because I have a different view on the Nuggets, is it seems like Rudy once owned the paint. Absolutely deserved his back-to-back Defensive Player of the Year awards. I have not seen that this year, and I watched them play OKC in the bubble, and of course Shai Gilgeous is amazing, but he was going at Rudy Gobert like he didn't know who he was. And there used to be a reputation factor. Like, you didn't go after Dwight Howard back in the day, even though Dwight wasn't leading the league in block shots all the time. You just didn't challenge him. People used to not challenge Rudy. Shai Gilgeous ignored him. And I noticed every team seems to attack the paint on Utah more than they used to. They are not the defensive-minded team they once were. They're actually a very good offensive team when they're rolling. The bubble is impossible to gauge them because they didn't try to win. And I'm not accusing them of tanking. I just know they didn't try to win. They played weird lineups. They wanted this series. That's why they didn't try to win. Probably. They wanted this series. They did not want Houston. They wanted this series, and so they got it. Yeah, you asked for it, you got it. Donovan Mitchell, to me, we look at X factors, and we'll talk about MPJ in a minute. Donovan, in the Denver game you referenced, in the Lakers game that was within a day or two of that, he was extraordinary. He's not always been extraordinary. He needs to be fantastic. And then the other thing is I'm watching the Nuggets play, and we've got Jokic being this brilliant player. We've got this burgeoning superstar talent in MPJ. And Jamal Murray, he gets about the same usage as Jokic does. And how is he going to be? Right now, it's about 26% Jokic, normally 24% Murray, and it works just fine. If all of a sudden we see a little more Murray, a little less Jokic, I don't think that's a good thing. I like it going. I like the ratio that they have. And you referenced this, too, in your article today. Watching Jokic and MPJ is like watching a brilliant quarterback and wide receiver. He is built to be the wide receiver you want for Jokic. Super tall, athletic, amazing hands, great feel, can race and catch the touchdown pass, but also a little touch pass in the half court that Jokic is so brilliant at, but a lot of guys couldn't catch it. MPJ can catch it and finish it. So that becomes an intriguing thing, too. So
very interestingly, in their one bubble game, the Utah Jazz clearly took notice of Michael Porter. because they put Royce O'Neal on him. And Royce O'Neal is there just wherever the best player is, unless he's a center or a point guard, you're guarding him. And that left Joe Ingles on Paul Millsap, which I thought was a very interesting decision. And Paul Millsap barely posted up this year. 4 post-ups per 100 possessions, according to Second Spectrum tracking data. Lowest of his career by far. I wonder if but we've seen him in the playoffs, even last year against Aminu. Beast, smaller guys. And I wonder if he still has that gear in him for when it matters, because frankly, Jeremy Grant has outplayed him in the bubble, and Paul Millsap has looked a little bit old. That's something I'm watching. Jokic this season against Gobert and the Jazz, 29, 12, and 9 on 56% shooting. The post-up battle is so fun to watch between these two, because Jokic can't get all the way to the rim. And finishing over Gobert is hard. So what happens is he backs him down in Jokic style, patient, just sort of taking his time on Jokic time. And they get to the block charge circle. And that's like the area of detente. It stops there. But then Jokic will fake, reverse pivot, fake again, left hand, right. It just unleashes this series of fakes. And he can get Gobert a little bit off balance and off kilter, and then put in a little floater. We're going to see some Sombor shuffles, which is his little shuffling fadeaway jump shot. And just the way that they'll set a lot of cross screens to try and get him switches. And Utah's actually been quite good at switching and then switching out. Like Gobert will switch and then switch back. Right. That's an interesting little battle. And the other thing you mentioned is the outlet passes. I don't really know why, other than they've been turnover prone. But Utah's transition defense has been awful this season. I think Denver should look for chances to run. Denver's a pretty slow team in general, but I think against this team, against the Jazz, which is a good half-court defense team, I think they should hunt some chances to run when Jokic gets a rebound and can see somebody ahead of him.
Utah's not a very athletic team. They look almost like they were built to play in the EuroLeague, with Donovan being a big exception and Mike's age for Mike Conley. This is why I think Jeremy Grant is a great factor for Denver. Just an elite level athlete for any position on the court who's playing very, very well.
And by the way, we might see him and Millsap and Jokic all together. We have seen that because of the Barton-Harris uncertainty. Which
is another issue, is this is not Denver at full strength, and we have no idea what they'll look like. Jordan Clarkson, to me, is fool's gold. He is absolutely able to put up shots against anyone. But Utah,
I like that. He's able to put up shots against anyone. Yeah, he'll shoot.
He'll shoot. He has no conscience of the idea that, we're actually trying to be efficient and productive. And it really flies in the face of, I was really surprised Quinn went with them all year, because they're built on second side, third side action, spread the court, and they've been successful at it. Utah is a great shooting team, not a good shooting team. They can be I think they might have finished top 5 for the year. I don't care about the year, because that was so long ago. My kids were still high school kids back then. I don't remember October, November, December. But since the All-Star break, they've still been, I think, maybe 6th or 7th as shooting. Obviously, losing Bogdanovich, and he was their best shooter. And Clarkson can shoot. If he can buy into a role. And then here's where I think, you mentioned this before, this Gobert-Jokic contest. If Rudy would buy into the identity of just being the defensive presence I've always been, he finally has an offensive team that can do a lot more. And Mike Conley's been playing much, much better late in the season. That's huge for them. But Rudy fancies himself as a scorer now, and not just a dunker. He always kind of leads the league, him and Giannis, in dunks. If he would just buy into defense and make it tougher on Jokic, I think Utah have a much better shot. But watching these games, he still wants to score. He thinks that's important. And it's a mistake.
Well, and in his defense, he's had some efficient scoring games.
Pick and roll all day long. Don't complain about it. Yeah. Don't try to post up Jokic. Just attack him and pick and roll and in transition.
Even skinnier Jokic, no one is moving that dude in the post. Maybe Embiid can move him back a couple inches. To me, and then we'll move on. Yeah. The most interesting question is the Denver defense against, and I mentioned they're 29th since the trade deadline. I wonder, because their default under Mike Malone has been a pretty aggressive pick-and-roll defense. Jokic likes to come up to the level of the screen. I mean, you'll see him hang back now and then, particularly if it's the second or third pick-and-roll of a possession and he's starting to get a little tired. But they like to have him up. And, there's a risk there that if they get behind that play, they're playing 4-on-3 against your defense, and that's where Utah thrives. That's where they kick it, drive, kick, corner three. I just wonder if we'll see Denver dial it back just like 10%. Just sit back a little bit, trust our guys to get over screens. We're not going to give up pull-up threes that are completely wide open. We're not going to die on screens. You sit back, not like sit back like Brook Lopez, but like hang back a little bit more so that we can maybe stay out of rotation and stop these guys from getting their machine going where they're passing it everywhere. And Jokic has said he prefers the aggressive style. It gets him sort of energized. He likes it. Yeah. So maybe not. I mean, I would even think like, late in the clock, you can switch against Gobert. He's not going to hurt you in the post. Now, Jokic can't guard Donovan Mitchell on the perimeter, so that's a bad. But I wonder if they'll dial it back 10% to try to stop the Jazz drive and kick machine from really getting them in rotation. But we will see. Ready to move on to the next one?
Yes, I do. I'll throw in Joe Ingles, who for a while this year was really good, really, really good, then not so good. And I liked how he looked in the playoffs. Niang got really hot the last few games, shot really well. Utah's got just a bunch of guys that know how to play and will play their system. If Rudy buys in, I think it'll be a great 7-game series.
Yeah, Niang started making shots. They need their bench. Their bench started horrible in the bubble. Yeah. They need their bench to play. Their bench is thin. It might only be 3 guys. Right. We'll see if anyone gets the 4th spot. Okay, let's move on to stop the clock, restart the clock, series number 3. My choice, again, I'm the dictator. Indiana Pacers, Miami Heat, 4-5 in the East. The Pacers, Oladipo is back. Sabonis is gone, which is a problem. The latter is a problem. You have a team that loves long twos in Indiana against a Miami defense whose weakness is giving up lots of threes, or maybe not weakness. Maybe I think there's some intentionality to that. But the Pacers don't really want to take your threes. Miami won the season series 3-0. They are 7th in offense and 13th in defense. The Pacers are 18th in offense, 6th in defense. Oladipo is getting back in the swing of things. That's good. They've been starting a 3-guard lineup. Aaron Holiday, Oladipo, Brogdon, TJ Warren, and Miles Turner at center. That lineup has actually been quite bad, -6 per 100 possessions. The Heat, over the hiatus, decided to reinvent themselves as a full-time Bam Adebayo at center team with some Bam Kelly Olynyk minutes mixed in there, which I think was interesting and has worked out quite well with Jay Crowder at power forward. And so now we have 2 teams that at the beginning of the year were kind of big, like Myers Leonard and Bam is essentially 2 centers. Miles Turner and Domantas Sabonis is 2 centers, and now they're they've downsized together. I like this matchup a lot for Miami, not just because we get to see Jimmy Butler frothing at the mouth to embarrass TJ Warren, but I'm not convinced Indiana is going to be able to score enough against them to win. Bam can switch if need be. They're going to switch 1 to 4 a lot. I'm interested to see if Indiana can get enough points to win, but what do you think?
I was surprised you picked this in your top 4. Not that you were picking the most competitive series, because I do think it's going to be fun to watch, and I actually am a huge TJ Warren fan. So I was really happy to talk about this early on, but I don't see it as a super competitive series like I do the other ones. The first 2 we've done, I think both go 7. Indiana can't score, and the only time they do score is when TJ Warren is being Damian Lillard or Devin Booker. But they got to go against Miami and Jimmy Butler. I don't love that for him. Brogdon's a pretty good matchup with some of their guys, but Adebayo can hang around the rim and protect it. I would say that in Orlando, Zach, I thought Miami executed their offense better than any team in terms of just forget about talent, execution. It was gorgeous to watch. And Indiana's really good at guarding your threes. And Miami is an amazing 3-point shooting team, as you know. But they're just as fine to back cut you for layups or run DHO and fake the handoff and roll.
Well, the Duncan Robinson Bam 2-man game is getting so sexy. I can't take my eyes off that thing. It's beautiful. And
let me tell you something. I broke down some tape for some players of mine to study really good cutters, and I focused on Jimmy Butler.
Great cutter.
People like to top block him as if he's dangerous coming off screens, which he's not off pin downs. And he lets them do it, and then whoop, blink of an eye, he's cutting to the rim. He's flashing on weak side because the lane's always open out of bio out on the perimeter, and they know how to pick their poison. every freaking time. And so I just feel like Indiana is depending on 1.5 guys, maybe with Brogdon to score, and I just don't think it'll be enough. The games will be competitive as heck for a lot of reasons. They know each other well, but I think Miami is significantly better.
Indiana's hope is if you're going to guard TJ Warren with Jimmy Butler, okay, that means you have to defend our 3 guards. Aaron Holiday's pretty explosive. He's not super reliable, but he's explosive. I like Aaron Holiday. Yeah, Oladipo is 2 years removed from an All-NBA season, and Brogdon was a borderline All-Star this year, okay? So if you're guarding TJ Warren with Butler, that means you've got to guard those 3 guys with some combination of Jay Crowder, Duncan Robinson, Goran Dragic, Kendrick Nunn. Jay Crowder's a good defender, but he's at a quickness disadvantage in those matchups. He guarded Oladipo a lot in the recent game. Duncan Robinson is a sneakily a little better defender than opponents seem to think he is, but he's at a quickness disadvantage. Miami's point guard defense all year has been their one big weakness. They just don't have a good point guard defender. Indiana's going to need big games every single game from at least one of those 3. They're going to need like an A+ game from one, or an A game from one, and a B+ game from another, and a B game from another to have a chance in this series. Because I don't really see Miles Turner doing any damage. I think Bam can take Miles Turner out. And even when they switch, I think Miami is like, Miles Turner, you want to post up against Jimmy Butler or Jay Crowder or Duncan Robinson? Like, go ahead and take your crappy 15-foot fadeaway, and we don't care. I think, though, that's their hope, is those guards going hog wild off the dribble and creating some havoc. And maybe they can do it. I mean, those guys are good players. But to me, more than focusing on TJ Warren scoring, if they're going to guard him with Butler, then those 3 guards have to really wreak havoc.
Yeah, and Indiana also has got to create, because we think that we know their offense is struggling, will struggle against Miami too. They're going to have to force turnovers, which they're fine doing. They're happy to guard the heck of. They probably guard the ball harder than any team in the league. They're going to force some steals. They're going to get some runouts. Miami's playing faster though in Orlando. They up their pace, and for whatever reason, maybe it's Bam at the 5 helps, but I like that. With that kind of shooting, it's very, very hard to guard 3-point shooters in transition. Miami can really launch a lot of threes and bury you in any one game. And if Indiana's trying to protect the paint, Miami's going to kill them with it.
A couple of I mentioned earlier Miami won the season series 3-0. I should mention Brogdon missed 2 of those games. Oladipo missed 2. Sabonis missed 1. So I don't really think that's relevant. But what you said earlier struck me. You know, I didn't watch every Miami game, obviously, in the bubble. I can't watch every team, every game. But when I saw Miami, they did have the air of a team who has figured something out about themselves. And if you look at the lineups that Spo has been playing, one of the things he's figured out is, A, obviously Bam at center. We're going all in on that, which I think was smart and inevitable. Yep. And B, we are playing 3 shooters at all times. We are not going to play lineups with 3 non-shooters. So that means in our starting lineup, we have Butler and Bam, and we have Kendrick Nunn, Jay Crowder, and Duncan Robinson, or throw Dragic in there when Kendrick Nunn was hurt. Off the bench, they're playing Iguodala and Derek Jones Jr. with 3 shooters around those guys, Hero, Olynyk, and Dragic, or whoever else is the 3rd shooter. And there's very little overlap where they have 3 non-shooters on the floor. And that's why you saw, I think one of the reasons why it feels like they're humming a little bit is they had one game, I believe it was against Indiana, where Derek Jones Jr. got like 6 lobs on the pick and roll and finished all of them, because that's the role in which he's useful. You put him out there with a bunch of shooting and let him rim run, and all of a sudden he's a dangerous offensive player. So they had the feel of a team that like locked its rotation into a place where they feel really comfortable. There's no mysteries about it. Everybody knows what their role is. Now they'll mix it up here and there and play. They'll probably play 3 non-shooters here and there, but they seem pretty locked in. Whereas Indiana seems to be, kind of working Oladipo back, missing Sabonis. Like their backup center situation is a disaster. Jakar Sampson or Goga Batadze, who's not ready. They're going to get killed in those minutes, or they have been killed in the Batadze minutes anyway. Miami feels readier for this than the Pacers do.
I think you and I would feel very differently if Indiana was at full strength.
For sure.
Right.
For sure.
Sabonis is there and Oladipo's healthy. So nothing against Indiana, but they're missing 2 of their, 2 guys that were all-stars in the last few years. It gives Miami a huge advantage. And Miami's playing really well. That's the thing, is that they, like you said, I wrote about this on Troop a month ago or 2 months ago, I don't know, some point before the game started. the teams that take advantage of this pandemic break, and you'll see it. And I think we've seen it. I think we saw Phoenix take advantage. I think we saw the Spurs. I think Miami's one of those teams. Nothing against TJ Warren. Clearly something went right for him. Miami got better when they weren't playing games. And I think because of that, they're going to beat Indiana.
One last point. Indiana is 30th in free throw rate, so it's not like they get any free points either. They're going to have to earn every one. Let's move on to draft pick number 4 in my most interesting playoff series draft. This might have been number 1, if not for an ill-timed injury, maybe 2 ill-timed injuries. Yeah. I am devastated as a Sixers. What am I? I don't even know what I am. A Sixers obsessive, I guess. That Ben Simmons is going to miss this series. So that means we're on Boston-Philly. Philly won the season series 3-1. Obviously, Ben Simmons is out, which means that more or less we're going to see a lot of Joel Embiid with 4 shooters around him. Or let's say, because we're talking about the Sixers, like 3.5 shooters around him. And a bunch of guys cutting where they probably shouldn't cut and bumping into each other and doing Sixery things. But Joel Embiid has owned the Celtics consistently. Daniel Tice is giving up more weight than I want to even think about because I worry on his behalf that he's going to be physically injured by this matchup. And you can find people in very, dark hallways in the NBA who will whisper to you, I'm actually more scared of a Sixers team with Joel Embiid and 4 shooters than I am with Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. Now, I don't agree with that. I think you just need a certain threshold of supernova talent to win, and Ben Simmons is a supernova talent. But we are going to see that. Defensively, without Ben Simmons, the Sixers might be about to have a big Jason Tatum problem because he was their Jason Tatum assigner. He was the assignment on Jason Tatum. He's gone, and that has a bunch of trickle-down effects. Philly got any chance here, Coach?
I don't see it. I'm glad you mentioned Tatum. That was one of my first things, maybe the first thing I wrote down other than the Sixers' little Horford Embiid high-low game can be good against Boston. I thought about that, and I watched tape, and I saw that I was right on that. But who's going to guard Tatum? Who's going to guard Brown? Both have had big games against Philly. Here's what's really interesting, Zach. I went back and watched the last 2 games. In 2017, it felt like it was so long ago. And one of them, Embiid had 38, and it was an angry 38. He had one of the most resounding dunks he's ever had from 6 feet away, which he's capable of doing because he's 11 feet tall. And he destroyed Boston. But then the next time, and also he posted up relentlessly and made some threes and took 10 or 11, and made 10 free throws, I think. But the next time they played, the first play of the game was the Sixers high-low that I just told you about with Horford dumping an Embiid, little hook shot over Tice. He made it. And that was his last field goal of the game. He didn't post up. He had no energy. Now, he could have been sick. That happens more than I think a lot of us realize. Something's wrong, and we don't know about it because they don't talk about it. But he just mailed it in. Well, Ben Simmons played in that game. Ben Simmons is not playing in this game, and you're right. You're still talking about an elite-level talent. Now, Ben wasn't playing very well before he got hurt, and maybe that's why he wasn't playing well, to be fair. But I don't know how they guard Boston, who, as you mentioned in your article, is playing together, and they've got 4 dudes that average 17 or more. Kemba seems healthy. Brown looks terrific and has looked terrific against Philly. Tatum is an all-NBA player now. I don't know how Philly can hang with them. I did look at one rotation. I was looking what can they have without Simmons, and I found one where they have Milton, Tabul, Harris, and then Scott and Horford. And they only played 35 minutes, but they had 135 offensive rating. Maybe they should have played more minutes, but that's going deep to find that. I'm not sure that rotation can work. Other than that, I just, if they want to get Embiid scoring against 3 guys every other game for 4 or 5 games, I think they'll be chasing around those Celtics shooters, and I think they're going to run them out of the gym.
It's so Sixers that we all spent 2 weeks obsessively thinking about and writing about this ballyhooed new starting lineup with Shake Milton and Al Horford coming off the bench, and maybe this is the thing. Maybe this is it. 23 minutes, minus 12. Goodbye. We will not see that lineup again for quite a long time. It's so Sixers. Obviously, Embiid has to have a monster series. And I do think his passing out of double teams has been markedly better
Improved,
in Orlando. Yeah. And that's when Tice is in the game, they are going to send help. They're going to double him. And Boston is going to bet you can't beat us that way because, A, you don't have enough shooting. Like, we're going to live with Al Horford semi-contested above the break threes. I do wonder without Simmons if Al Horford can kind of migrate to that dunker spot a little bit instead of being the one pass away entry passer that doesn't scare anybody when Joel Embiid has the ball. But we're just going to see a bunch of post-ups. This is actually an okay series for Enes Kanter, I think, which is not always the case. I actually think Boston's upside is a little higher if they give more minutes to Robert Williams than Enes Kanter. But this is
I was going to mention him. He's an enormous man.
He's playing well. He can pass. He can pass the hell out of it.
He's going to get some minutes. Let's be fair. You credited Boston's spirit and energy. We can't say the same about Philly. I've not seen it. I did like how Embiid celebrated with Milton early on in the bubble. He made the three, and Embiid ran and chest bumped him after they had fought before. So I'm glad to see that. But that's what you should be doing. I'm not going to celebrate that. I like Coach Brown. We're not friends, but I think he's done an amazing job and he's great for the league. But I think this is the last series he coaches for the Sixers, unless nobody wants to eat anyone's salary, which is a whole other thing because of the money situation for next year. I don't see that team operating on the same page. Where I feel like Boston to me going into this series has a feeling of, okay, they're going to be one of the teams we're talking about in 3 weeks.
Boston is 4th in offense and 4th in defense. That's wow. That's a wow team.
Right, and Tatum is 46% from three since the All-Star break, and nobody can guard him off the dribble, which they could last year. He was not good off the dribble last year. This is where superstars take the next level, Zach, at that size. They've got to be able to dribble the ball. It's hard to do, by the way, really hard.
He also hit some floaters against Toronto, which has been Tatum's his floater has been like, is it going to hit the top of the backboard? Is it going to go into the crowd? Is it going to fall? Is it going to be an air ball? And if he starts hitting that, and that could be a big shot for him in this series because attacking Embiid at the rim is usually a losing proposition for even the very best guys. I wonder. So again, Simmons was the guy they had guarding Tatum, which makes a lot of sense. You take him off the floor, I don't really know that I don't think Tobias Harris can do it. He's worked hard to guard wings, and he's a little better at getting low and doing that, but I think he's more comfortable on Jaylen Brown and Gordon Hayward, guys who are a little less sort of lethal with the first step. Josh Richardson then becomes your next option. Well, he's given up a ton of size. He's good. He's tenacious as all hell. I love Josh Richardson. He's given up a lot of size, and the trickle-down effect of that is then you got Shake Milton guarding Kemba Walker on the pick and roll, and that's a recipe for some pain. Even with Embiid waiting back there to smother everything that comes at him. I wonder if they're going to get to a point in this series where they decide to start Tybal and say, we just need another defender on the floor, and Tybal can guard every wing you throw at him, he can guard. But I also think their offense will suffer, and I don't know that they will be able to produce enough points downgrading. I mean, Tybal's fine. He can hit a couple spot-up threes here and there, but I think the Simmons injury is almost a bigger deal for them on defense than on offense in this series.
I agree. I think, let's just take what you said a little step further. How many games will it take before Coach Brown to make that decision? Because to me, if Boston runs them out in game one, Tybal's starting in game two.
Could be.
No time to wait.
But here's your hope. Embiid without Simmons this year, Sixers are plus 11 per 100 possessions in 643 minutes. Like, he's that good. Joel Embiid, when he's engaged, is that good.
I agree.
And that dominant against Daniel Tice in particular. And Tice, by the way, Tice has been awesome this year. This is not to denigrate Tice. This is just like he's an undersized center going up against the closest thing we have to Shaq in the league.
Right, exactly.
And Tice, if he hits threes like he did against the Raptors, if you get 2 out of 4 shooting from Daniel Tice from 3 out of 6 shooting, like he doesn't have to hit like 7 threes. Right. If you get a couple of threes from him, the Celtics ratchet up a level. Like when they get good center play, then they're a championship contending level team. When they get blah center play, they don't look as good. The other guy who's playing really well, and it just feels like he's been lost in the shuffle, unfortunately, since day one in Boston with a horrible injury, is Gordon Hayward. He's playing really well. He's shooting it well. He doesn't look like there's something about him that just doesn't feel like he's ever quite settled in there. But he's playing quite well. This is a really uphill battle for Philly because you just need Embiid to play monstrously big every game. Like I just don't see.
It's hard to do that.
I don't see. Yeah, I don't.
Night.
I don't see how they win without a huge Embiid game. The other guys just offensively kind of aren't bringing enough, and they have talent. Like Tobias is good, Horford's pretty good, yeah. Richardson's pretty good. It's just Boston is awesome, and just a shame that Ben Simmons is out because the Boston Philly rivalry. Andrew Toney. Yeah. On down, I like it. Just you'd love to see it, but we'll see. Did we miss anything here?
No,
I don't think so.
I'm glad you referenced the old. I was a Laker fan, so I didn't like Andrew Toney, but
the Boston Strangler.
I feared the Celtics as a Lakers fan, and I was rooting for Philly always when they played Boston. So yeah, and Simmons grew into the defensive player we thought he would be. I mean, he is one of the best 5 defensive players on the planet. And for a lot of reasons. And it's just you don't replace that against a team like Boston that's playing so well on offense, kind of like Miami with more talent.
This is too depressing for me. As I've been waiting for the Sixers to in the playoffs all season long. Maybe I just whiffed on them. They were my pick to make the finals. I thought, okay, this is a team that's tailor-made for the playoffs. They're going to have the best defense in the NBA, and they're going to be big at every position so that they can hunt mismatches down. Well, here they have a 5'11" guard in Kemba Walker. I know he's listed at 6 feet. I'm as tall as Kemba Walker, and I'm not 6 feet. I'm just short. And you're like, well, maybe they can hunt Kemba Walker down, get him switched on to, but you're like, who? Who are you like? I mean, Tobias Harris will post him here and there. That's not scaring you. Josh Richardson isn't really going to post him. Like all of a sudden, without Ben, they just sort of seem like a lot of their identity got sapped away, and we're going to be talking about that Jimmy Butler decision for a long time if this thing goes south. But again, they're injured right now. This is not a fair representation of what they can be. But this is going to be a tough series for them. Let us go on to the next series on the list, series number 5 of our 7-series draft. I think we're on 5 or 4. Yep. I don't know, 5. Whatever, it doesn't matter.
5.
A series that I initially had higher, but these 5 series are all pretty good. 2-7 in the West, the Los Angeles Clippers against the Dallas Mavericks. The Clippers are second in offense. Sneak up on you at number 2. You don't seem like the number 2 offense in the NBA. Number 2, 5th on defense. The Mavs are first on offense, first ever, 18th on defense. This just the sheer this is for star power. I mean, what Luka has been doing in the bubble, but more than that, what Porzingis has been doing in the bubble is really interesting. And then you have the PG Kawhi tandem. Now, Harrell hasn't played in the bubble yet, so we haven't seen the real Clippers. The Clippers won the season series 3-0, just demolished Dallas by 10 points per 100 possessions. The most obvious issue that Dallas has going into this series is if Dorian Finney-Smith is guarding Kawhi Leonard, then that means Tim Hardaway Jr. is guarding Paul George, which is bad. And can they defend this? I mean, Tim Hardaway competes. Navigating screens is not a strong suit of his. Can they do enough to remotely slow down the Clippers offense? I think the answer is probably no, but I'll tell you this. The Clippers, we'll talk about it. They bring a lot of advantages to this matchup on defense that probably no other team in the league can match. Okay? They have 2 absolutely elite wing defenders. They have an elite point guard defender. They have defense everywhere, all around, everywhere you look. You're still not stopping this offense. Dallas is going to score. Dallas is going to find good matchups for Doncic and Porzingis, and they're going to get points. Now, you might slow them down, and they did slow them down, but you're not shutting this team down. So these games could be really fun.
I think it'll be super fun. I'm going to read you a list here. This is since the All-Star break. A lot of my breakdowns I started mid-February. That seemed long enough to go.
Yeah.
Pat Bev, 53% from 3.
Uh-oh.
JaMychal Green, 46%. Pat Patterson, 48%.
Oh,
George, 46%.
Oh.
Reggie Jackson, 42%.
No.
Kawhi at 39% and Sweet Lou at 37%.
Scrubs. Not even over 40%.
Since the All-Star break, I mean, what are you going to do if you're Dallas? If those guys have it going.
You know what you're going to do? Try to score 130 every game.
Oh, for sure. And this is where you go into the defenders the Clippers have. So you mentioned Montrez being out. So it's not, and I know you know this well, it's not just Montrez being out. We think he's going to be back, maybe even get a practice in. but he's not going to be good. If he is, he's a really incredible player, which he actually is an incredible player. He's even better than I would have thought because, like you saw Zion. I did not think Zion. I actually wrote this. Zion will be fine. They'll just be out of the bubble at that point. Like you can't go for 13 days and then just suddenly show up and be great when you just got back to begin with. So Montrez has been out. I don't know that we can expect much from him. And Pat Bev has been out of the lineup with injury. Reggie showed up, and they've had all these issues. Lou Williams got the quarantine issue with when he went to the restaurant or whatever in Atlanta. They aren't where they need to be. But that, like you like to mention with LeBron and Cleveland, it almost like gives them a launching pad. Like, okay, let's start the drum beat. Here we go. And all of a sudden, they become the juggernaut we thought they would be when they first did the deal to get those two studs. And so I think that what you said is exactly right. They are not going to stop the Mavericks, but they don't have to. They just have to make them a little less efficient than the best offense in the history of the league, which Dallas was this year. And I don't see how Dallas can slow them down anywhere close to the same.
And Kawhi is going to have someone to pick on the floor at all times, whether it's a big guy who, in drop coverage in the pick and roll, or he's become a little more predatory in the last couple of years about, okay, where's the small guy? Let me bring his guy up to screen for me, and maybe I'll get a switch. Maybe they'll hedge, and I'll get a little opening to play with. Although he's not such a great passer in those kind of blitzing situations. He's okay. So obviously Dallas, since Dwight Powell got hurt, has been starting Porzingis at the 5. I wonder if it's opening tip or midway through the first game, or if they wait a game, if Doc Rivers puts Zubats on Dorian Finney-Smith and guards Porzingis with one of his big wings, because once you do that, you just start being able to switch everything. And I told you before the podcast, Dallas loves to run the Spain pick and roll or the stack pick and roll, where it's a Luka KP pick and roll, and then someone sets a back screen behind Porzingis for his guy or on his guy. I saw a couple of clips against the Clippers where the 3 defenders involved in those plays were Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, and Marcus Morris, and it's just like, what the hell are you supposed to do? Like, if you get Marcus Morris switched on to Luka can take him off the dribble. Luka can get inside, but like, it's still going to be a tough shot. It's like, man, that's not that kind of switchability. Pat Bev will, by the way, Pat Bev will guard Luka here and there, and he'll fight. And like, they're just going to make it hard. They're going to make the best offense by points per possession in the history of the NBA. They're going to make it hard every single trip.
I think that Pat Bev is going to want to guard Luka some because that's who he is. And he's just got that unbelievable fighter mentality, which I think helps galvanize the team to some degree. I don't think Kawhi and Paul George competed all that hard this year. They picked their spots. Now, they were rolling late before you got in the break, but they learned from LeBron. There was just no reason to kill themselves all year. The team's loaded. You mentioned Marcus Morris, who I've always been a fan of. He is not shooting well, but we know he can really shoot. And if they get production from him, which is fair to guess, and Reggie Jackson's been, I think, looked pretty good for a guy that no one really sure what he'd bring. They're just so loaded. And I like JaMychal Green. He's athletic, he brings energy and can shoot.
He's been great for them. JaMychal Green at center has been a successful kind of lineup for them. Reggie Jackson, I was skeptical. He's played well. I'm still a little skeptical that will carry over. But, they're so good that like someone like Landry Shamet could be the odd man out in their rotation.
And next year, I was just thinking, I mean, he did not shoot well this year, and he's been injured now. But if you two, let's play a game with me. Put Kawhi on Portland and put Damian on this team. And then tell me Damian can't get to the finals. Come on.
Yeah, maybe.
They are loaded. These guys are loaded with talent. If they play together, I think they're the best team in the league. We just haven't seen it, and partly because of injury. Doc Rivers has talked about this, as you know. But it gives them an opportunity. I think Dallas will be a good challenge because of their offense, and the Clippers should feel great about themselves if they win, especially in 5 or so, which I think they can do. They're going to have to play well, but I think they will. Yeah, I think they're just a much better team.
And if they're going to try to guard Porzingis with Zubats, KP's got to have a big series. He's got to pick and pop them to death, take threes, work off the dribble. His passing has improved this season. Dallas is really good. They're a really good team. This is life in the West. Like, Dallas is a freaking awesome team, and they're 7th. And they're playing just a really, really, really awesome team.
I love Zubats, by the way, too.
Zubats is good.
New Orleans should have him also. The Pelicans could have done it early enough and gotten all those players in LA, including Zubac.
The Lakers should have him. Is who should have him. Right. I mean, okay, enough of that series. Let's really take a long distance dive in quality to, I guess, my sixth draft pick. What's left of the Brooklyn Nets against the defending champion Toronto Raptors. Hey, all credit to the Nets.
Yes.
Jacques Vaughn is runner-up for coach of the bubble. They competed down to the wire. Had a Caris LeVert shot to eliminate the Blazers yesterday. He just missed.
Look, in a meaningless game for them. It had no meaning, and they played that well.
Garrett Temple, Joe Harris, Caris LeVert, Blank, and Jared Allen is like a representative NBA starting lineup. Whether maybe it's Kurucs, whoever it is. After that, I don't know that they can compete with a team that can go like 10 deep and really good players. Can you give me something here?
Well, let me just do what you did and give Caris LeVert his due. And that's about the only thing I can really say. Even if Brooklyn was at full strength, forget about Durant and Kyrie. Toronto is almost like Miami and Boston. They're playing very, very well.
They're ready.
And they know who they are too. And the defensive player of the bubble was Marc Gasol. I think his defensive rating, after a few games, his defensive rating per 100 possessions was 70. It's
pretty good.
I think it ended at 90. They know how to execute both sides on the court. Lowry, I think Lowry didn't play. They're playing right now. I think Lowry sat out. He needs to.
I can't believe there are games today. They should just cancel these games. What are they doing?
They really should. Or just let the G Leaguers play. I think that, Toronto, I since the All-Star break, they're 6 in 3-point shooting in terms of percentage, and Brooklyn is 25th. Toronto's got their sights on more than just round one.
Oh,
right?
No
Brooklyn's
question.
happy to be there. Thrilled not to be in the 8th seed, not to be in a play-in game, which they thought they might be in when we first started.
Great job. I thought they would. I'm disappointed Orlando didn't pass them.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm disappointed in the Magic that they really just have not played very well. But
no, after the first couple of games, after the first game especially, they were bad. Brooklyn is not. I'll say this: it'd be unfair for me to say that Brooklyn isn't going to have that extra get up and go, whatever you want to call it. I won't use a curse word. To be competitive, because they had it last night when they didn't need to.
Yeah.
They just did not have to try as desperately as they did to beat Portland. And it wasn't for any reason that, we want to have integrity in the game. No, it doesn't work that way. They competed for their coach and each other, and they're going to do that here. But Toronto comes at you in waves of athleticism.
Just arms everywhere. Just arms and like bodies moving around.
And if you miss, they're flying. Right, they're flying up and down the floor for fast breaks and jumping in passing lanes. I just don't. I don't see the Nets being able to do much. If they lose their spirit, these are blowout games, and so maybe in game 1 and 2 it'll be more competitive. And I don't think Toronto will look past them either. I just think they've been around long enough, the veterans, where they're going to take it one day. They really get it. There's nowhere else to go. They've been in Florida the longest, as you know. They just seem a team that's going to be a very, very hard out, and Brooklyn is going to get swamped.
Let's talk about LeVert, because he's been one of the stars of the bubble. Just carved up the Blazers last night from mid-range, floater range, got to the basket, averaging 7 assists a game in the bubble, which is very good for him. He's been the sort of like, if Brooklyn wants the third star, he's the trade chip that gets them the third star. And I think he's now raised the question of like, well, maybe I can be the third star. But he's done it in a way that, he has the ball a lot, and he's isolating a lot, and he's quite good at it. He loves that left wing triple threat position. He has an amazing first step. He's shooting 26% from 3 in the bubble, and he's like 33% for his career. That style of play does not mesh super well with Durant and Irving. Like, they're the guys who want to play with the ball. Now, on the other hand, they're both great long-range shooters, so another ball handler to take some pressure off of them during the regular season, I think fine. But I think ideally you want that third star to be able to shoot from 3 a little better. Maybe LeVert can be that player, but Caris LeVert is not going to get to play like this when those two guys are healthy and around him.
Unless they make him their sixth man.
Ooh.
Which I think is when I was watching him play in that game, I thought, okay, if they can work that out and let him be
become Ginobili. You become Ginobili.
Right. Bring him in early and just turn him loose when you're resting one of those two other guys. He can really score. And he should get better as a shooter. We have to mention one of my two favorite players in the league are Jeremy Grant and Joe Harris for different reasons. I don't know either gentleman, but I've heard amazing things about them as people. I love Joe Harris. I love the way he plays.
He's a perfect fit next to those guys.
Perfect. Yeah. So he starts when those guys are back, but against this team, I just don't know they're going to be able to create enough dominoes. Steve Kerr once said, you got to get the first domino to fall, and then you play 4-on-3 or 5-on-4 from there. Well, that's when Joe Harris makes his money, is when you get the first domino to fall. I don't know that LeVert and everyone else can make the first domino fall against this team. There's going to be a lot of 5-on-5 action. It's going to be tough for Joe Harris to get open unless he's get out and running. But Toronto's great getting back and finding people. They don't let you score in the paint. They're like you said. It's not just arms. It's arms and legs flying everywhere, scrambling up the middle. And then you got Gasol at the paint. You just don't score inside. So it's tough to get easy baskets against them. And now Toronto has everyone talked with their Achilles heel on offense. I get that. But that's not going to matter in this series. There's going to be enough misses where they're going to get out and go, and they're going to cook.
LeVert's been playing great. And, he's raised his trade value to the point that if you just take a cursory glance around the league and say, okay, I'm building the Brooklyn Big Three in my head. Who am I targeting? Who's actually so good that it's worth trading Caris LeVert to get that guy as my third guy? You're not going to find a lot of names that are realistically available to you. Drew Holiday is a guy that will get mentioned. Is he the third guy? Maybe he's a good fit, decent fit. Beal has obviously been the guy who's been mentioned the most. Now, Beal's an ideal fit for those two. Beal's fantastic. Beal's an unbelievable player.
He's a fit next to anyone on the planet.
And I'll tell you an interesting. It's just one of these things that will catch people by surprise. Caris LeVert is about to turn 26. Bradley Beal just turned 27. Yeah. It seems like you'd be trading young for veteran in making that exchange. You're trading a year up. That's it. That's a trade I'd probably I still make if I'm Brooklyn, and obviously you have to include more assets than Caris LeVert to get Bradley Beal. But that's the one name. I mean, like Zach LaVine. That's not. I don't know. Is he better than Caris LeVert? Maybe. I don't know. I don't think so. It's close. Rudy Gobert is a name people will bring up. I mean, this is way far down the line, and that's an obvious fit with Brooklyn, right? I mean, but Jared Allen's pretty damn good himself and young and improving, having a great bubble. You just run out of names pretty fast because LeVert has been that good. LeVert's no longer like intriguing young prospect. LeVert is like, damn, this guy's putting up like 26 a game in the bubble and like balling out.
He was really scoring well before he got hurt.
Yeah.
And the question was, how would he recover? Well, he answered that question.
Well, the Raptors are going to win this series. So anyway, let's move on to the last series. My total notes for the Milwaukee Bucks against the Orlando Magic are, I'm mad that Jonathan Isaac is injured. That's it. That's the full analysis of the series because we are robbed of watching Jonathan Isaac try to guard Giannis, which would be a lot of fun and a lot of arms and legs flying around. Aaron Gordon will get the assignment. He's, I think, day-to-day. He'll probably play at some point in the series, if not right from Jump Street. He's all right at it. Like, Aaron Gordon's a really good defensive player. Orlando is 23rd on offense. They were surging before the bubble. They are no longer surging. They're right in the middle of the pack. Can you talk me into it? Fultz is starting again. That's kind of exciting. The Bucks are the most aggressive, go under everything, even against average shooters defense in the league. Fultz is going to get all the open mid-range shots he wants. The Bucks were not great, have not been great. Guys have been in and out of the lineup. A couple guys are recovering from COVID-19. I think they're going to come out like a house of fire when the games start to matter and just blow the doors off the Magic right from the get-go. And the Magic right now have been starting Gary Clark, James Ennis, and Wes Iwundu. And with apologies to those guys, you are not going to beat the Milwaukee Bucks with those guys playing. You're not going to beat them once or twice with those guys playing big minutes, let alone 4 times.
No, I really thought what you said. If Jonathan Isaac, my son is going to Florida State, he'll be playing with the team. So I've been following them I've been knowing them for a long time. But I really started paying attention to them when the coaches told me what an incredible young man he was. And that injury was devastating. Then he came back, and I didn't know what he'd look like in the playoffs. I didn't look like what he looked like in Orlando for these seeding games. But he looked like he had gotten stronger, and I thought, well, boy, if they don't get to 7, which I actually thought they would do, like you did, he's going to get to guard Giannis some. And if you're going to script, Zach, if you're an artist and you would draw, what would a guy look like that could maybe give Giannis some trouble? He would look like Jonathan Isaac because he kind of looks like Giannis in terms of body.
Might look like Bam Adebayo.
Huh?
He might look like Bam Adebayo.
Yeah, right. Isaac is so athletic, but whatever. He's out. Milwaukee, I think, has done what LeBron and the Clippers. They've been bored for a long time. And I think what you said is exactly right. They're going to come out. I mean, obviously, you can't guarantee you're going to shoot well. Nobody can. But in terms of frenetic energy and excitement, they're thinking one game at a time for 16 wins. And finally. And so I think Orlando's going to feel the brunt of that these games now count. They haven't played a meaningful game almost all year. I mean, they played like 5 meaningful games all year because they've been up ahead of everyone for so long. And we're going to see that excitement of, all right, now we get a chance to cheer where it means something. I hope Giannis continues to shoot and miss threes and eventually starts making some because he'll need them later on. They're going to play better teams than what this team is. I like Vucevic. I'm a fan of what he's done in Orlando.
He's good. Vucevic is a good player.
He's a good player, but they don't have enough of those guys, and it won't matter. And Brooke Lopez, who I think has a home in Disney World, and I don't mean like by the arena. I think he has a home like you can walk to it from the amusement park. Because a player I talked to said he stayed there once. He is at home. I don't think he's living at his home right now, but it's right there.
He can't live at home.
Yeah, he can't live there, but it's right there. And I'm so proud of that young man for the way he's changed his game. And I think they're going to be so excited to finally play meaningful games, and Orlando's going to feel the brunt of that for sure.
If you're an underdog against the Bucks, your path to winning is, well, these guys give up a lot of threes by design. They're going to let our average three-point shooters shoot. And your path to win is we make 18 threes. I mean, we just have a night where we make 18 threes. And there are not many teams that are less equipped to have that kind of night than the Orlando Magic. And so I just, I can't really find. Maybe they'll surprise us. I mean, they beat the Raptors in Game 1 last season. Feels like about 5 years ago, and it's kind of woke the Raptors up a little bit. But this doesn't feel like a very fun series. And as always, the East rounds out. I feel like the East 1-8 and 2-7 series are just always series number 7 and 8 in our draft order. And a series that isn't even happening yet was ranked. I ranked the Lakers versus X over those series. Coach, any final thoughts before we go about the bubble or the playoffs or anything else you want to share?
I do. I know you feel the same way. It has been a joy to watch these games. As some of the coaches' players, I know how competitive they are. And I'm not surprised. And talking to a bunch of guys in the bubble, they've loved it. And we've seen, and kudos to the NBA for what they've managed so far. And I one last thing, Henry Abbott, my partner, wrote about this. The NBA is not crowing about what they've accomplished. They have been humble. They know that one positive test, and who knows what happens. They have been exactly what we need this country to be: humble, diligent, determined, focused. The players get it. They don't want to screw it up either. Let's hope that things keep going. And I think we're going to get some fantastic. If the seeding games are any indication, including games that didn't matter to both teams, were as exciting as they were, we're, I think, looking at an amazing, amazing postseason run. The fans would have to watch it on TV like I'm doing.
The games have been unbelievable. Almost the first New Orleans Utah game, the very first game was a little bit sloppy, but it went down to the wire. Almost every game after that has been like, these guys were off for 4 months. Like, they couldn't practice. It's crazy how good the game has been. And you're right. Not only is the NBA not crowing, I would describe them as borderline paranoid. They're like, we can't screw this up. Like, we're one like accidental mistake away from the whole. Like, they're not. It's the opposite of crowing.
I wondered, Zach, if they're going to kick Phoenix out of their hotel last night at midnight. Like they are anxious to close that hotel and get everyone into just 2 hotels. Then eventually everyone just 1 hotel. They want to limit their turnover possibilities. Basically, they're lowering their risk. So they're on top of it. The players should be proud. The coaches should be proud. But the executives running the league should be very proud. But don't get arrogant. Please stay focused so we can all watch these games and enjoy them.
I can't believe Phoenix went 8-0 and didn't even make the play-in. That shows you how long the odds were really for them. They went 8-0. Memphis suffered a couple of key injuries to like 2 prospective starters are injured. And the play-in was still just, Caris, they were inches away from getting into the play-in, but they were unbelievable. Congratulations to them. I think this will, they're not going to win 55 games next year, but I think they've set themselves up to really have a good shot at breaking their playoff drought, which has now reached 10 seasons next year, or 9 seasons. No, 10 seasons.
The West is ridiculously loaded.
It's ridiculous. It's just insane.
Now don't forget the Warriors.
Someone should tank just to do it. Like the Thunder should tank just to be like, well, like what are we? Like every team in this league. If I'm like I've said before, I think Memphis is going to struggle to meet its expectations. What are now fan expectations?
Yeah.
I think the team I'd be worried about is Minnesota, because they owe that lightly protected pick to the Warriors via the Wiggins trade. And right when that trade happened, I said I like that trade a little bit better for Golden State than most people do. People hammered them because Wiggins has been so disappointing. Minnesota has Russell, and they have Towns, and Malik Beasley was good for them. And like those are sexy names. The rest of that roster is just so. Those guys are not the anchors of even an average defensive team, or there's no evidence that they can be. And in the West, it's just a murderer's row every night. Like that pick would, if I were Gerson Rosas, I'd be losing sleep at night over that pick.
And the teams for sale, or maybe will sell. It just your insight as always is dead on. They're the team to do it, because to get healthy next year in this conference is, unless there's a big migration out of it, which is no reason to think there will be.
Well, even the Spurs, like people have been like, maybe the Spurs will trade their veterans. Like, well, okay, one of their big veterans isn't even playing in the bubble, and they look really not like those young guys are all coming along. Keldon Johnson's a player. Like, they got some guys on that team.
I agree. And you wrote about Derek White. I love White.
He's a stud.
Murray is such a defender, and give him time. I'll leave with this. I was watching DeMar DeRozan. They played yesterday. They were eliminated, so they were done. And DeRozan didn't play. And that dude gave everything he could in these games.
Yep.
Think about where he's been, where the Raptors are now. Such a professional. He is so representative. I don't know DeMar, but the players I've talked to who have played with him love him. He is so representative of what the typical NBA player is today. Complete professional to the very end. And that's one reason why they pulled off what they've done so far. Now, obviously, there's exceptions everywhere. But these guys, in light of all that's happened in the country and Black Lives Matter, everything else, they've managed to do their jobs when a lot of us don't always do our jobs, when there's other distractions and health issues at risk.
Yeah.
I'm proud of all those guys and the executives, and now hopefully we'll have one hell of a show coming up the next 2 months.
Well, it's 4 games a day starting Monday until the first round until teams start getting eliminated. So we've got a lot of hoops to binge. Coach, this is always a pleasure. I'll talk to you soon, and best to you and your family.
Thanks, pal. You too.